Mistress forces a wealthy billionaire to marry her, but he turns back to his pregnant wife. In the upscale neighborhood of Sapphire Grove, where lavish mansions loom behind tall wrought iron gates, a shocking rumor sweeps across manicured lawns and exclusive country clubs. The reclusive millionaire Nathaniel Cross has left his pregnant wife Evelyn for another woman. Whispers echo in the marble halls of the social gallery. Who is this mistress, and how did she manage to lure him away from a devoted wife who carries his unborn child? Yet beneath that polished veneer lies a storm of lies, betrayal, and desperation. The tangled web of secrets threatens to unravel, and all eyes watch, breath held, as the truth comes crashing down. Sapphire Grove woke each day to the quiet hum of expensive cars and the crisp bark of purebred dogs walking on manicured lawns. This was a neighborhood where people valued appearances above all else. Its gated community boasted immaculate streets lined with perfectly trimmed hedges, each house more splendid than the last. In the largest, most ostentatious mansion at the end of Magnolia Lane lived the Cross family, headed by none other than the esteemed entrepreneur and philanthropist Nathaniel Cross. Nathaniel, or Nate as his close circles sometimes called him, was a tall, handsome man in his late 30s. Dark, neatly combed hair framed a face that was kind when relaxed, but intense whenever the topic turned to business. He had inherited a chain of boutique hotels from his late father, expanding them into a multi-million-dollar empire known for its old-world charm and exceptional customer service. Despite his wealth and power, Nathaniel mostly kept a low profile. He had endured enough heartache in public due to his parents' divorce in his youth, and he prided himself on maintaining privacy. Inside the Cross mansion, dawn spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows into a spacious master bedroom. Nathaniel stood there, watching the sun's rays illuminate the wide lawn that stretched behind his property, but his thoughts lingered on the future, and the small life that would soon join him and his wife, Evelyn Cross. Evelyn was a gentle soul, a former art teacher with flowing auburn hair and a warm, comforting presence. She had always been the quieter half of their partnership, supporting Nathaniel's ambitions without a hint of envy. At the moment, she was 5 months pregnant, a blessing they had long awaited. The doctors had advised rest, given her occasional bouts of dizziness. She was carrying precious cargo, after all, and the entire Sapphire Grove community knew how dearly the Crosses had yearned for a child. The Crosses had yearned for a child, but not everything in Sapphire Grove was as tranquil as it appeared. Rumors had begun to spread in hushed voices over delicate china cups at high society brunches. Someone in Nathaniel's orbit, an outsider named Camilla Drake, had reportedly been vying for his attention. Camilla, an ambitious and cunning woman in her late 20s, worked in the real estate sector. She had found success flipping luxury homes in prime neighborhoods and selling exclusive condos to the city's elite. Her reputation for getting what she wanted was as famous as her trademark red lipstick. Sapphire Grove might have looked the other way if all this ambition had been reserved for real estate alone, but the rumor mill insisted that Camilla was targeting a far more personal prize: Nathaniel Cross himself. Inside the Cross home that morning, Nathaniel made his way to the kitchen. His wife, dressed in a loose maternity gown, was stirring herbal tea. The faint circles under her eyes told him she hadn't slept well. She looked up, greeted him with a tired yet loving smile, and said, "Morning, Nate, I'm fine," without him even asking, but her hand lingered protectively over her growing belly. He kissed her forehead gently, feeling a swirl of emotions. The pressures of his business expansion had taken a toll, and he could sense a subtle distance creeping between them. They were both anxious about the pregnancy. It had been fraught with complications from the start, but he reassured himself that once their baby arrived, safe and healthy, everything would be fine again. "Have you heard from Marcus Ellison about the new hotel's opening date?" Evelyn asked, changing the subject as she sipped her tea. Nathaniel exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "He says we might need another month. There's a zoning issue near the waterfront property. We're working on it." Marcus Ellison was a close business associate who had helped Nathaniel streamline a series of negotiations with local authorities. Known for his calm demeanor, Marcus was typically unflappable. If even he was showing signs of stress, Nathaniel knew the stakes were high. Evelyn nodded, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "You'll work it out," she whispered, as though any louder reassurance might crack the fragile serenity of the morning. He offered a tense smile. "I just don't want any more delays. This project is already behind schedule, and the investors are getting restless." But beneath the talk of business and construction deadlines lay something unspoken. Evelyn, though gentle, had an instinctive understanding of Nathaniel's moods. She sensed he was weighed down by more than zoning issues. He'd come home late once too often recently, and she had noticed the faint but telling scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his suits. It wasn't the sharp professional scent of the cologne he usually wore. This was softer, sweeter, unmistakably feminine. It clung not just to his clothes, but to her thoughts. She told herself it was probably just a new cologne or a different air freshener at the office. Still, that night she had held one of his jackets to her face, breathing it in like a test, looking for a reason to doubt her doubt. The alternative, that Nathaniel was hiding something serious, couldn't be true. Could it? The thought pierced her like a needle, but she buried it deep, afraid of what she might find if she kept pulling at the thread. And so, she desperately wanted to believe. In Sapphire Grove, everything seemed perfect on the surface. Yet behind the grand facades of mansions, storms brewed in secret. As day broke, Nathaniel and Evelyn tried to hold on to the world they had built together, unaware that it would soon be threatened by forces they had never anticipated. Trust, once unquestioned, had become a fragile thread between them, stretched thin by late nights, unanswered texts, and the growing weight of silence. Drama was about to unfold, drama that would shatter Sapphire Grove's calm, exposing the darker side of ambition and longing. And at the center of it all would be a dangerously determined woman who cared nothing for tradition, morality, or the sanctity of someone else's marriage. 2 weeks later, the Sapphire Grove Country Club buzzed with talk of the upcoming charity gala. The Sapphire Grove Gala, an annual affair, was the biggest social event of the season. High-end donors paraded their benevolence in designer gowns, auctioning off art pieces and exotic vacation packages, all in the name of philanthropy. It was a night to see and be seen. Evelyn, with her blossoming belly, had every intention of attending, though she was uncertain how long she could endure standing in high heels. By her side, Nathaniel had pledged to appear, but he was more focused on networking with potential business partners than enjoying the evening's festivities. Enter Camilla Drake. Rumors swirled that Camilla had landed a seat at one of the prime tables, courtesy of her new friend, the wealthy widow and society maven, Vivian Cole. Vivian was known for collecting interesting people in her social circle. She prided herself on being at the center of Sapphire Grove's rumor mill, bridging old money and new with equal flair. Camilla's role as a real estate power player, forging her path in Sapphire Grove, had attracted Vivian's attention, and the widow had offered Camilla an entree into exclusive gatherings. The night of the gala, the country club's ballroom glittered under a constellation of crystal chandeliers. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided among guests, offering gourmet canapés and top-shelf champagne. String quartets alternated with jazz ensembles, providing the perfect accompaniment to murmured conversations and polite laughter. Evelyn, draped in a flowing emerald gown that emphasized her maternal glow, stood near the silent auction table. People congratulated her, asked after her due date, and offered bits of well-meaning advice. She graciously smiled and responded with warmth. Her eyes often drifted to find Nathaniel, who was mingling across the room. When she spotted him, her heart clenched. He was locked in conversation with a tall, striking brunette in a figure-hugging ruby-red gown. Camilla Drake. Just by the tilt of Camilla's chin and the way she swayed closer to him than necessary, Evelyn sensed the conversation was more personal than professional. Evelyn approached them slowly, forcing a polite smile as she neared. She caught snippets of the conversation. "The Seaside Crest Project, Nathaniel. With your backing, I'm sure it'd be a success," Camilla purred, brushing a stray lock of her dark hair behind her ear. Nathaniel noticed Evelyn's approach and stepped aside, creating a bit more space between him and Camilla. "Ah, Evelyn," he said, his voice tensing almost imperceptibly. "I was just discussing some possible investments in the city. This is Camilla Drake. Camilla, meet my wife." Camilla's lips parted in a gracious smile that didn't reach her eyes. She extended a well-manicured hand. "Evelyn, I've heard so much about you," she said politely. Evelyn took the hand in a brief handshake, noticing the tightness in Camilla's expression. "Nice to meet you," she managed. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice. "Oh, let me not monopolize your husband's time any longer," Camilla said, casting Nathaniel a lingering look. "There are so many people I want to speak to tonight. Enjoy your evening." She turned and disappeared into the crowd. Evelyn's eyes were drawn to her swaying hips, feeling an uneasy knot tighten in her stomach. She tried to steady her breath, telling herself not to be paranoid. She believed her marriage was built on a solid foundation of love and mutual respect. One woman wouldn't shake that, right? Nathaniel placed a hand on Evelyn's lower back, a gesture that had always signaled protection. "She's just a business contact," he murmured in her ear. "Don't worry." Evelyn forced a smile. "I'm not worried," she lied, placing a hand on her belly. "Your daughter's going to be a dancer. I swear she's been active all day." His face lit up for a moment as he pressed a hand gently over where their baby stirred. "I'm so glad you're here with me," he said softly. "Let's try to enjoy the night." For the rest of the evening, Evelyn attempted to push Camilla's image out of her mind. She chatted with other expectant mothers, let wealthy matrons rub her bump for good luck, and tried to savor the event's luxurious atmosphere. But every smile felt forced. Every laugh too light, like she was playing a part in someone else's performance. Across the room, she occasionally caught a glimpse of Camilla's eyes, tracking Nathaniel. It left a subtle chill in her chest. There was something predatory in Camilla's gaze, as if she already knew the ending to a game Evelyn hadn't realized had begun. The night ended as Sapphire Grove galas often did, with smiling faces and generous checks for charity. But behind the glittering lights and orchestrated perfection, Evelyn could feel a shift. Something had cracked open, and it wasn't just the ache in her lower back. Nathaniel and Evelyn drove home in intense silence. She wanted to ask him outright if something was going on, but the words wouldn't form. She had always trusted him. If there was something more to suspect, it had to be just in her head. Maybe her pregnancy hormones were amplifying her insecurities. Still, she couldn't shake the image of Camilla's hand brushing Nathaniel's arm, and how slow he'd been to move away. Unbeknownst to her, or even to Nathaniel, the seeds of doubt had been planted, and Camilla, cunning and relentless, had no intention of letting them wither. In fact, she was watering them daily, with glances, whispers, and the kind of orchestrated coincidences only a woman with a plan could execute. Days turned into weeks, and Sapphire Grove returned to its usual glimmering monotony, or so it seemed. Behind the scenes, the rumor mill was working overtime. The Volunteer Society ladies gossiped at the Sapphire Grove Library fundraiser. The fitness buffs whispered during their morning yoga classes by the lake. And every mention circled back to the same scandal. Camilla Drake's got him wrapped around her little finger. I heard they were spotted alone after midnight again. Did you hear Nathaniel Cross was seen leaving Camilla Drake's new condo on West Briar Street? That can't be right, can it? Evelyn, for her part, tried to remain composed, but every so often, an acquaintance would hesitate mid-conversation, searching her face before abruptly changing the subject. She could sense the silent judgments, as though everyone was pitying the pregnant wife. Their eyes said what their mouths wouldn't. Poor Evelyn, holding on to a man already halfway gone. She found it nearly unbearable. One afternoon, while Evelyn was sorting through baby clothes in the nursery, the phone rang. It was Colin Wade, an old friend of Nathaniel's from college, who also happened to be Sapphire Grove's most sought-after family lawyer. He had guided them through some property acquisitions in the past and had always shown a genuine warmth toward Evelyn. His voice was low, tinged with concern. "Evelyn, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue, but is Nathaniel home? He's in a meeting. Do you want me to give him a message?" A pause. She heard him inhale deeply. "Look, can we talk off the record for a moment? I've heard something unsettling, and I want to make sure you two are okay." Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard, hoping her voice would sound stronger than she felt. "We're fine," she responded, but the uncertain waver in her voice betrayed her. Colin cleared his throat awkwardly. I've heard from a colleague. Camilla Drake apparently approached him for some legal counsel. She was, inquiring about prenuptial agreements, specifically about how to challenge them or leverage them in certain circumstances. Evelyn's heart pounded. The room tilted slightly, her fingers curling tighter around the phone. But what does that have to do with Nathaniel? There was a pause. Too long. That's the thing. I'm not sure. My colleague didn't say Nathaniel's name explicitly, but Sapphire Grove is a small world. He recognized her from events with Nathaniel. She might just be exploring her options. But, well, it's concerning. Concerning? It was terrifying. Evelyn's mind raced with possibilities she didn't want to imagine. Evelyn listened, paralyzed. 1,000 questions bloomed in her mind, but her lips wouldn't move. I see. Thank you for telling me. Colin sighed. I don't want to stir trouble if it's not necessary, but if there's something going on, it's better to be aware than blindsided. If you or Nathaniel need anything, legal advice or just someone to talk to, I'm here. Thank you, Evelyn whispered before hanging up. She sank into the rocking chair by the crib, feeling the weight of her daughter's future pressing against her ribs. Her free hand gripped the armrest, knuckles pale. She wanted to scream, but the silence of the nursery was deafening. She absently stroked her belly, whispering a reassurance to her unborn child that everything would be all right, even as her mind whirled with doubt. Her instincts were screaming now, louder than ever. That evening, when Nathaniel came home, she debated whether to share what Colin had told her. But as soon as she saw him, exhausted, tie askew, stress etched in the lines around his eyes, her resolve faltered. She had always believed communication was key in a marriage, yet fear held her tongue. Fear of confirming what her heart already feared. Fear of pushing him further away. While Evelyn wrestled with her silence, Nathaniel was battling his own turmoil. Over the past few weeks, Camilla had become more persistent. She had an uncanny talent for knowing when Nathaniel would be at a particular restaurant or property showing. She often found ways to bump into him, always armed with some new business proposal or a personal anecdote that skirted dangerously close to flirtation. He told himself repeatedly that he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was a businessman. She was a prospective partner. But the excuses were beginning to feel thin. But guilt gnawed at him, especially when Camilla's gaze lingered a beat too long or when she stood a bit too close. Her fragrance, a heady mix of jasmine and cedar, lingered in the air long after she left. And sometimes, long after she was gone, he'd find himself still thinking about her, more than he wanted to admit. One late afternoon, Nathaniel was in his office reviewing the Seaside Crest investment portfolio. Marcus Ellison had warned him about ballooning costs, and he needed to rethink the project's viability. The door swung open, and Camilla strolled in as though she'd owned the place. She wore a pencil skirt and a white silk blouse, her confidence a shimmering aura around her. You really should get better receptionists, she teased, closing the door behind her without an invitation. They barely put up a fight when I said I needed to see you. Don't worry. I told them it was urgent. Nathaniel frowned. Camilla, I'm busy. If you want to schedule a meeting, talk to my assistant. She laughed, an almost musical sound. This will only take a moment. I have a new proposal I'd like you to review. Some prime waterfront property up north. She leaned against the edge of his desk, ignoring the chair across from him. But that's not all. I see how tense you are. You can talk to me about anything, you know. He swallowed, meeting her gaze with caution. I appreciate the concern, but... Nathaniel, we don't have to pretend. I know your world, even if you think I don't. You're always trying to do the right thing, for your business, your investors, your wife. She paused, letting that last word hang in the air. But you're only human. You can't shoulder everything alone. Nathaniel felt his frustration flare. This is crossing a line. Camilla, I'm married. My wife is pregnant. I don't know what you're implying, but... She moved closer, her voice dropping to a sultry whisper. I'm implying that you deserve happiness, Nathaniel. Real happiness, without the burdens of family expectations and old ties. Her eyes flickered, her face alight with a strange determination. People in Sapphire Grove love to talk about moral codes, but they'll still betray you when the chips are down. Don't you want someone who sees you for who you really are? Before he could reply, she lightly touched his arm. The contact was electric and alarming. He pulled away, standing abruptly. "I think you should go," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Camilla studied him, a slow smile curling her lips. "I'll go, for now. But remember, there's more than one way to get what we want." She placed a thick folder on his desk. "Call me when you're ready to discuss the waterfront project. I think it could be lucrative for both of us." With that, she turned and left, leaving Nathaniel alone with the echo of her words. That night, he drove home in a haze of confusion and guilt. He resolved once again to set clear boundaries. However, Sapphire Grove had a way of magnifying secrets. The more he tried to hide the simmering tension between him and Camilla, the more curious everyone became, and the more curious they became, the more uneasy Evelyn grew. The seeds of doubt, sown weeks earlier, were now sprouting into tangled vines. Evelyn fought them daily, telling herself that Nathaniel's late nights and flustered phone calls were all part of a busy professional life. But the rumors wouldn't stop, and neither would Camilla. For Sapphire Grove, a scandal was brewing, one that threatened to overshadow even the most lavish galas and philanthropic deeds. And in the midst of it all stood a pregnant wife, a conflicted millionaire, and a mistress who would stop at nothing to achieve her goal. The Sapphire Grove rumor mill reached a fever pitch when Camilla Drake appeared at a community board meeting, publicly challenging certain zoning restrictions that stood in the way of her new project. Nathaniel, already embroiled in negotiations for his own developments, found himself blindsided when she named him as a potential collaborator during her presentation. In a matter-of-fact tone, Camilla addressed the assembled community leaders. "With Nathaniel Cross's expertise and influence, we can turn Lakeshore Haven into a prime resort location. I look forward to finalizing these details with him." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Among them was Evelyn, who had forced herself to attend out of a sense of responsibility. She was now in her 6th month of pregnancy, feeling bigger, more exhausted, and more emotionally frayed than ever. She had come hoping to support Nathaniel, but he hadn't even known she would be there. Nor had she known Camilla planned to name-drop him so brazenly. The shock on Nathaniel's face told Evelyn everything she needed to know. This wasn't something he'd agreed to. After the meeting, Sapphire Grove's community leaders dispersed in small knots of curiosity as Nathaniel tried to intercept Camilla in the hallway. She was already swarmed by officials who congratulated her on her bold plan. Evelyn stood at a distance, her hand resting on her swollen belly for reassurance. She watched as her husband finally managed to pull Camilla aside. Their exchange was brief but heated. She saw Nathaniel's jaw tighten and Camilla's calm, almost mocking half-smile. That night at home, Evelyn confronted him. "What was that about? Why did she say she'd be finalizing details with you?" Nathaniel pacing in the living room, with the city skyline behind him, Nathaniel raked a hand through his hair. The weight of it all, lies, pressure, and guilt, was crashing down. "She's trying to trap me into partnering with her. She never mentioned my name to me before that meeting. She blindsided me." He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "It felt like she set a trap, and I walked straight into it, in front of everyone. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I know this is stressful. I should have told you about her more clearly from the start. She's persistent, and I tried to handle it, but she's stepping up her game." His voice cracked slightly, the first sign that this wasn't just business anymore. Evelyn's voice trembled. "Are you having an affair with her?" The question burst out before she could swallow it. Her eyes brimmed with tears she refused to let fall. It was the one thing she feared most, and yet it came out of her mouth like a confession of her own weakness. "No," he said emphatically, looking at her with pained honesty. "I promise you, I'm not." But he trailed off, uncertainty flickering across his features, and that pause, that half-second hesitation, cut deeper than any lie. "But you've thought about it," she whispered, feeling an ache spread through her chest. She was terrified of his answer. He shook his head, eyes dark with regret. "She's attractive, and I'd be lying if I said I never noticed, but I never wanted. No, I would never choose her over you." A tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. "Then why does she think you might? She's acting so bold, like she already has you in her pocket." He exhaled heavily. "Because she's manipulative. She knows I have some influence in Sapphire Grove. She knows the Lakeshore Haven project is important to me, and she's been dangling a collaboration that could solve some of my construction and zoning headaches. Plus, I think she just wants to be with me, in whatever twisted sense. Twisted didn't begin to cover it. Evelyn's skin prickled. Evelyn's heart clenched with a mix of relief and dread. What are we going to do? The rumors are flying. Even Colin Wade called me, worried about prenuptial agreements. Nathaniel stiffened, his fingers curled into fists on his knees. She's talked to lawyers about me? Apparently, Evelyn said, sinking onto the sofa beside him. She didn't want to sit, but her legs were trembling. This is serious, Nate. His mind whirled with the possible consequences. Lawsuits, reputation in ruins, a media storm, investors gone, and Evelyn broken. Sapphire Grove was a wealthy community, but it was also a small social pond. A single scandal could topple reputations, sever business relationships, even ignite messy lawsuits. And so, a new plan took shape in his head. I'll confront her, he decided. Not just in passing. I'll arrange a meeting, somewhere public enough that she can't twist the situation. And I'll make it clear that this stops now. No more name-dropping. No more illusions about me leaving my wife. His voice hardened with resolve, and for the first time in days, Evelyn saw a flicker of the man she married, the protector. Evelyn tried to ignore the knot in her stomach. I trust you, she said softly. Please, please be careful. The next afternoon, Nathaniel chose a local cafe, an upscale but still public venue, to meet with Camilla. Sunlight streamed through tall windows onto polished tables set with fresh flowers. The aroma of freshly ground coffee filled the air, offering a sense of normalcy that belied the tension at the table where Nathaniel sat. Camilla arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a stylish blazer over a fitted dress. She offered a bright smile to the hostess and slid into the chair across from Nathaniel, without waiting for an invitation. I hope I haven't kept you waiting too long, she said, crossing her legs. Traffic was horrible. Nathaniel ignored the pleasantries. You blindsided me at the board meeting, he began, his voice firm. I never agreed to partner with you on Lakeshore Haven or any new development. She feigned innocence. Oh, come on, Nathaniel, don't be so dramatic. We've talked about doing business together. I might have mentioned Lakeshore Haven's potential in passing. You did mention it, he said, but never in a way that implied a formal partnership. You deliberately misled the entire board. He placed his hands flat on the table. I won't tolerate you using my name to further your own interests without my consent. Nor will I allow you to spread rumors about us. Camilla leaned forward, lowering her voice. Rumors, you say? Don't pretend the Sapphire Grove social scene isn't half your marketing strategy. You're one of the wealthiest men in town, so naturally people talk. But if you really want to silence the gossip, we can handle this quietly. We don't have to be at odds. Nathaniel felt his frustration spike. Stop with the insinuations. My wife is pregnant, Camilla, and I won't let you keep harassing me or her. She sighed, drumming her nails on the table. I was hoping we could come to a mutually beneficial arrangement, but if you insist on being so moralistic, well, maybe we do this the hard way. He frowned. What does that even mean? Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, the carefully polished veneer fell away, revealing a steeliness beneath. It means you'll marry me, or you'll pay for crossing me. Nathaniel stared at her, stunned. A disbelieving laugh escaped him. You've lost your mind. You're saying I should divorce Evelyn, who's carrying my child, and marry you? Camilla shrugged elegantly. There are ways. Yes, Sapphire Grove might gossip, but they'll move on quickly when something new comes along, and I can make life very difficult. If you reject my proposal, your Lakeshore Haven project could be stalled, or your new investors might suddenly withdraw. Perhaps we can even create a scandal so large that you'll have no choice but to distance yourself from Evelyn to protect your business. The weight of her threat hung in the air. It pressed against his chest like a vice, tightening with every second of silence. Nathaniel clenched his fists under the table. His nails dug into his palms, leaving little crescent moons of fury. You can't be serious, he hissed, keeping his voice low to avoid a scene. I won't abandon my wife or our unborn child. Camilla leaned back, arms crossed. There was something disturbingly calm in her posture, like a predator waiting for the prey to bleed out. We'll see. You have a lot to lose, Nathaniel, more than you realize. Sometimes what seems impossible becomes the only solution. Her voice dripped with faux sympathy, but her eyes burned with icy calculation. She stood abruptly, smoothing her skirt. I'll give you time to think this through, but if you try to shut me out, I promise you'll regret it. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like gunshots across the polished floor. She left, leaving Nathaniel feeling like the world had spun off its axis. He'd expected a manipulative pitch, but an outright ultimatum was far beyond anything he'd imagined. He sat there, staring at the untouched coffee in front of him, his mind racing with possible outcomes. His throat was dry. His hands shook slightly. Was this blackmail, coercion, or something more dangerous, something personal? He knew Sapphire Grove was governed by powerful influences, reputation, and money. If Camilla was as connected as she claimed, she could very well cause havoc in his business dealings, or worse, drag Evelyn into a public scandal at a time when she was most vulnerable. And Evelyn was already walking an emotional tightrope. One wrong step could endanger both her and the baby. He realized with a sinking heart that he had underestimated Camilla Drake. She was more ruthless and more desperate than he had anticipated. She wasn't just playing to win, she was playing to burn it all down if she didn't. And now the question lingered in his mind. How far was she willing to go to get what she wanted? Over the next week, Sapphire Grove buzzed with the latest developments in Nathaniel's business. Word spread that the Lakeshore Haven construction had hit another roadblock. The official line was that a labor dispute was delaying progress, but inside sources whispered that certain permits and inspections were being held up. Unofficially, of course, no one could prove who was pulling the strings, but the timing was too precise, too clean, too cruel. Nathaniel saw the writing on the wall. Every day brought new complications, or cancellations. Investors expressed concern and potential partners became skittish. He spent countless hours on the phone, trying to smooth ruffled feathers. He barely slept, barely ate. He was fighting shadows, and Camilla's grin haunted him like a phantom. But the abrupt shift was undeniable. Camilla was making good on her threat, or at least someone was helping her orchestrate it. Meanwhile, Evelyn felt the change at home. Nathaniel was consumed by, worried, anxious, and on edge. Even when he tried to reassure her that everything would be fine, she found him awake at odd hours, staring into the darkness, deep in thought. She tried to comfort him, but her own fears were growing too. One afternoon, while Evelyn was resting in the sunroom, the doorbell rang. She pushed herself up, her belly making it difficult to move swiftly. At the door, she found a delivery man holding a bouquet of vivid red roses. "These are for you, Mrs. Cross," he said politely, handing over a small envelope along with the flowers. Surprised, she thanked him, wondering if Nathaniel had sent them as a romantic gesture to alleviate her stress. But her heart sank when she read the card. "To my future sister-wife, Camilla. I promise we'll work it out, or else." Evelyn's face went pale. She read it again, as though hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something benign. They didn't. Her hands trembled as she walked to the kitchen and set the bouquet on the counter. The twisted message set off alarm bells in her mind. It was taunting, menacing. One more step in Camilla's attempt to rattle their marriage. Later that evening, she confronted Nathaniel with the card in hand. "She sent me this. She's gone completely insane." He looked at the note, his face darkening with anger. "I'll put a stop to this," he growled. "She's harassing you now. That's crossing the line." But a stone of dread weighed on Evelyn's chest. What if we can't stop her? What if she's got so much power in the city that your business falls apart if you defy her? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "I don't care. I won't let her do this to us." In desperation, he called Colin Wade and arranged an emergency meeting. The next morning, they gathered in Colin's office, a sleek, modern space in downtown Sapphire Grove. Colin listened intently as Nathaniel recounted Camilla's threats and the sabotage that seemed to be unfolding in his business. Colin tapped his pen against a yellow notepad. "Legally, this is a minefield. Unless we have proof of her direct interference, emails, recorded conversations, a money trail, we can't get a restraining order or pursue criminal charges for blackmail. She's smart enough to keep her hands clean. And as for the note, it's threatening, but not explicitly illegal." Nathaniel raked a hand through his hair. "So what? We just let her get away with it? Colin hesitated. We can do some digging. Hire a private investigator. Maybe try to trace the disruptions in your projects back to her, Colin said. But that takes time, and if she's methodical, it might not lead anywhere conclusive. Evelyn's voice was small. Is there any chance she'll just give up? Colin sighed. If her aim is to marry Nathaniel, or ruin him, giving up doesn't seem likely. She's playing a long game. The question is, how far is she willing to go? Nathaniel set his jaw. I don't care how far she goes. She's not forcing me into anything. I'd rather lose everything than betray my wife and child. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. She reached for Nathaniel's hand, gripping it tightly. In that moment, a flicker of hope kindled inside her. Despite Camilla's relentless attacks, the bond between her and Nathaniel still held strong. They left Colin's office with more questions than answers, but they had a plan. Investigate discreetly, document every incident, and stand united. Yet, as days turned into nights and Sapphire Grove churned with rumors, it became clear that Camilla wouldn't back down. If anything, her tactics escalated. It happened. One rainy afternoon, a thunderstorm had rolled across Sapphire Grove, darkening the sky. The Cross Mansion's power flickered ominously. Evelyn was upstairs when the front door burst open. She heard Nathaniel's voice, raised in anger, followed by a shrill retort. Alarmed, she hurried down the sweeping staircase to find Camilla in the foyer, water dripping from her umbrella. Nathaniel stood before her, blocking her path further inside. What are you doing here? He demanded, barely containing his fury. You can't just barge into my home. Camilla's eyes flashed. I called, but you never pick up. This couldn't wait. Evelyn paused halfway down the stairs, her heart pounding, watching as Camilla pulled a sheath of papers from her purse. Her voice was cold. I have in my hand a set of documents that will ruin you, Nathaniel. Emails from investors, witness statements, details of your father's old business dealings that you've conveniently kept under wraps. If the press got wind of this, your entire reputation would be destroyed. Not to mention, Lakeshore Haven would never be completed. Nathaniel glowered. I don't know what you're talking about. My father's dealings were above board. Camilla laughed, without humor. Don't be naive. The world loves tearing down the mighty. Whether or not it's all true won't matter once the headlines start swirling. And if that's not enough, I'll plant rumors about your current finances, your fidelity, your father's personal vices, anything that gives you or your wife a permanent black mark in this town. Sapphire Grove is vicious, Nathaniel. They'll devour the scandal. You're a monster, Evelyn managed, descending the last few steps to stand beside her husband. Her voice shook with rage and protective fury. Her hand gripped the railing as if steadying herself for battle. You can't do this to us. Camilla arched an eyebrow. There was no guilt, no flicker of doubt, just cold calculation. I can, and I will, unless Nathaniel does what I'm asking, and I'm only asking for a simple thing, marriage. Evelyn's vision blurred with disbelief. The air felt too thin, the walls too close. Are you out of your mind? Camilla's expression softened oddly, as if she believed her own twisted logic. Her voice turned syrupy, like she thought she was offering a gift instead of a threat. I've watched Sapphire Grove from the outside, always wanting to be a part of it. When I finally got in, I saw how shallow and transactional most of these relationships are. But Nathaniel, you have something real, a brilliance, a genuineness I've hardly ever found in this town. You think I'm merely a gold digger? Maybe once, but I've earned my own money. What I want from you is far more personal. Her eyes flicked to Evelyn. You have no idea how lucky you are, but your luck is running out. If Nathaniel doesn't leave you and marry me, I'll destroy everything you both hold dear. Her voice didn't rise, but every word struck like a blade. Evelyn's hand flew to her belly as she tried to steady herself against the wave of dread. Nathaniel placed a protective arm around her. She leaned into him instinctively, but her body was stiff with fear. You're deranged. He spat at Camilla. I will never leave my wife for you. Camilla smiled, almost pityingly. You say that now, but let's see how you feel when your business empire crumbles and your name is dragged through the mud. How will you protect your wife and child then? Even if Sapphire Grove stands by you, which they won't, you'll be financially ruined under constant scrutiny. Is that what you want for your baby girl? The name, baby girl, landed like a punch to Evelyn's chest. Her knees nearly gave out. Nathaniel's eyes narrowed. The storm outside seemed to intensify, thunder rattling the windows as if echoing his turmoil. He felt Evelyn trembling beside him. The weight of the threat pressed down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Slowly he spoke, picking each word carefully. "If I even considered your insane proposal, you'd have to guarantee Evelyn and our child's safety. Financially and personally." Evelyn gasped. "Nathaniel, no." She turned to him, her voice cracking. "You can't even entertain this. This." Her voice splintered into a sob that she swallowed back with force. He looked at her with anguish. "I won't let her destroy us," he whispered. "But we need time to figure out how to stop her." Camilla watched the exchange with a triumphant gleam in her eye. "You love your wife, that's painfully obvious, so I know you'll do anything to protect her. Make no mistake." "I mean what I say," Camilla said. "Marry me or face ruin." Nathaniel felt a burning hatred coil in his gut, but he forced it down. "I need time," he ground out. "You're asking me to upend everything. This isn't an overnight decision." Camilla nodded curtly. "You have 2 weeks, maximum. Otherwise, these documents find their way into the hands of the Sapphire Grove Chronicle and certain influential figures in City Hall." She turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Think about the future of your child, Nathaniel. This is the only way to shield her from the storm you've created." With that, she departed, leaving only the fading echo of thunder and the swirling tension in the foyer. Evelyn stared at Nathaniel, her tearful eyes full of disbelief. "Please, Nathaniel, there has to be another way." He pulled her into his arms, holding her trembling form against him. "I'm going to do everything I can to protect you and our baby," he murmured, wishing he could believe his own words without reservation. Those 2 weeks were an endless haze of anxiety. Evelyn's pregnancy made every moment more fraught, as stress could impact her health and the baby's development. Nathaniel took calls at odd hours, met with private investigators, tried to reason with potential allies in Sapphire Grove, but all roads seemed to lead to closed doors and half-hearted responses. Whispers traveled fast that something big was brewing in the Cross household. Everyone sensed the shift in power, yet no one wanted to risk their own position to assist. Camilla, for her part, remained elusive. She didn't harass Nathaniel daily. She didn't need to. Her ultimatum hung over him like a guillotine. On the 11th day, a packet arrived at Nathaniel's office. It was a copy of the damning documents Camilla had boasted about. He skimmed through them, his face growing paler with each page. While some were exaggerations or half-truths, enough valid points existed to cause irreparable harm if made public. With a bitter heart, Nathaniel realized Camilla had orchestrated this scenario with chilling precision. She had just enough real evidence to cast a dark shadow on his father's and his own dealings. Combine that with Sapphire Grove's penchant for scandal, and he'd be fighting lawsuits, fleeing investor panic, and facing a public relations disaster, with his pregnant wife caught in the crossfire. "It's not worth it," he muttered to himself in his darkened office. "I can't risk Evelyn's health, or the baby's. I'll marry Camilla, temporarily, buy us time, figure out how to dismantle her blackmail from the inside." The logic tasted like poison on Nathaniel's tongue, but he saw no other recourse. It was a deal with the devil, one made not with hope, but pure desperation. That night, he sat Evelyn down in the library. She looked up from the baby name book she'd been reading, her eyes tired and filled with longing for normalcy. There was a trace of hope in her expression, hope he was about to crush. "Nate?" she asked softly, sensing his turmoil. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I have to marry Camilla, publicly, at least in some legal sense." She yanked her hands away, face contorted with shock. The color drained from her face. The book slipped from her lap to the floor with a soft thud neither of them acknowledged. "No, that's insane." He bowed his head. "I know, I hate it, but if I refuse, she'll release everything she has. Investors will drop me. Sapphire Grove will turn their back on us. I could lose the business, maybe even this house. Our reputation will be destroyed." "You think I care about the house?" she snapped, voice breaking. "We built a life, Nathaniel, not a brand." He reached for her hands again, desperation in his voice. "I'm not doing it because I want her. I'm doing it to protect you and our daughter." "It's not love," It's survival, he added, voice barely above a whisper. Tears streamed down Evelyn's cheeks. But what about me, Nathaniel? This baby? Everything we've planned, our entire life together. Her hands clutched her stomach as if to shield their child from the pain she couldn't stop feeling. He closed his eyes, feeling his own tears threatening to spill. I love you, Evelyn. That will never change. But if we don't play along, she'll ruin everything. We'll fight it from within. I promise I'll find a way to overturn her blackmail. But for now, I need to put on this sick charade. And I need you to trust me. She stood abruptly, her pregnant belly making the movement cumbersome. You're asking me to stand by and watch you marry another woman. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. What kind of woman does that make me? Her voice broke on the last word. Nathaniel enveloped her in his arms, ignoring her initial attempts to push him away. She beat against his chest once, twice, before collapsing into it, sobbing. Eventually she clung to him, sobbing into his chest. They stood that way for what felt like hours, both hearts breaking under Camilla's merciless hand. The wedding took place in a private courthouse ceremony, hastily arranged. Camilla insisted on some semblance of pomp, despite the hush-hush nature of the event. There were flowers, a photographer, and a smug silence Nathaniel couldn't stand. She wore a demure white dress, but the triumphant glint in her eyes could not be concealed. Her smile said it all. I've won. Nathaniel stood rigidly by her side. Formal suit pressed, tie stiff. The efficient, oblivious to the emotional carnage, recited the vows in a monotone voice. Each word felt like a blade carving distance between him and the life he truly wanted. Evelyn did not attend. She couldn't bear it. She stayed at a friend's house, Rose Fairchild, a kind-hearted woman who had taught art with Evelyn years ago, trying to soothe her trembling nerves. She felt numb, devastated, humiliated. The knowledge that her husband was only sacrificing himself to protect her and their unborn child was the sole thread keeping her from unraveling entirely. After the brief ceremony, Camilla turned to Nathaniel with a proud smile. Thank you for doing the right thing, she said, lacing her arm through his for a staged photo. This is only the beginning. Nathaniel looked straight ahead, jaw set in stone, his heart pounding with a single thought. I will tear down every piece of this sham, Camilla, and set my family free. But for the moment, Sapphire Grove reeled with confusion. Some people heard rumors that Nathaniel had quietly divorced Evelyn. Others believed they had an arrangement. Most were simply shocked that Sapphire Grove's most enviable husband had tied the knot with an audacious newcomer. Speculation soared, fueled by the glimpses of Camilla's smug, satisfied smile at local gatherings. Evelyn, meanwhile, tried to maintain a semblance of routine. She decorated the nursery in pastel yellows and greens. She attended prenatal checkups alone, fighting back tears when the doctor asked why her husband couldn't join her. She practiced her breathing exercises, bracing for the day her child would come into a world that had turned upside down overnight. Little did she know that Nathaniel was working tirelessly behind the scenes to gather evidence against Camilla. He hired private investigators, tapped old connections, and set traps for Camilla's co-conspirators. A single shred of evidence that could prove her blackmail or sabotage would be enough to unravel her carefully woven net. And all the while, Sapphire Grove watched from the sidelines, hungry for each new twist in the scandal that had shattered its facade of perfection. It took nearly a month, but the pieces finally began to fall into place. Nathaniel's discreet inquiries yielded a breakthrough. Camilla had an accomplice in City Hall, a mid-level clerk named Martin Kincaid, who'd been funneling insider information and helping block Nathaniel's permits. Additionally, a forensic audit of Lakeshore Haven's finances revealed suspicious wire transfers to accounts linked to Camilla's real estate ventures. It was the thread they needed, a tangible link tying her manipulations to illegal activity. At first, the private investigator wasn't sure if these leads would be enough to charge Camilla with blackmail, but Nathaniel and Colin Wade, the lawyer, were confident they could wield this evidence to negotiate a deal. If Camilla didn't back off and release him from this sham marriage quietly, they would hand the dossier straight to the district attorney. But time was of the essence. Every hour they waited, the stakes grew higher. Evelyn's health, his child's future, his entire legacy. Evelyn's due date loomed, and her health was precarious. Stress weighed heavily on her, causing dangerous fluctuations in her blood pressure. The nights were longest for her, filled with silent tears and fears for her child's future. She tried to stay strong for the baby, but her body was beginning to betray her. And she could feel it. The showdown came on a crisp morning. The air was sharp, almost symbolic, cutting away the fog of denial that had clouded Nathaniel's world. Camilla was at the Sapphire Grove Country Club, sipping a latte in the lounge after a meeting with prospective buyers for her latest development. She looked entirely at ease, unaware that the ground beneath her was about to shift. Nathaniel arrived unannounced, storming past the hostess with a quiet resolve. He spotted Camilla chatting with a small group of acquaintances, wearing an elegant suit that made her look every inch the successful magnate. But today she would face a reckoning. "Camilla," he said, his voice low but resonating with authority, "we need to talk, now." She blinked in surprise at his uncharacteristically firm tone, but dismissed her companions and walked over to a corner table. There was the slightest falter in her stride, just enough to show she sensed the shift. "What's this about?" Nathaniel removed a thick folder from his briefcase, thumping it onto the polished wooden surface. The sound echoed like a gavel. "This is about the end of your little game." Camilla flipped open the folder, her expression turning unreadable. The color slowly drained from her face as she scanned the evidence. Financial records, correspondences with Martin Kincaid, notes from Sapphire Grove officials. Her jaw tightened. A muscle twitched near her eye. The mask was cracking. "Where did you get this?" she hissed, trying to keep her voice steady. But the sharp edge of panic cut through her words. "You underestimated me," Nathaniel said, eyes cold. "I may have played along with your blackmail to protect my wife and child, but did you really think I'd do nothing behind the scenes?" "It's over, Camilla." She snapped the folder shut, her jaw clenching. The confidence she once wore like armor was beginning to splinter. "This doesn't prove anything. So I pulled a few strings in City Hall. Everyone does. And those wire transfers are open to interpretation." She forced a scoff, but her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the folder away. Nathaniel exhaled as if weary, but his voice sharpened like a blade. "You can cling to that story, but we both know how this will look to the district attorney. Conspiracy to commit fraud, blackmail, sabotage. Sapphire Grove might be shallow, but they relish a scandal. You'll be tried and convicted in the court of public opinion before the actual courts even convene." He paused, letting his words sink in. The silence between them was heavy, charged with power finally shifting hands. "Your real estate empire will crumble. Everything you've built will be worthless. Unless you do exactly what I say." Camilla glared, wrestling with her fury and fear. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. For the first time she looked cornered. "What do you want?" "Annulment," Nathaniel said succinctly. "You'll sign the annulment papers this afternoon. You'll publicly state that we had a misunderstanding. And that you wish me and my real wife, Evelyn, the best," Nathaniel added. "You'll withdraw any claims on my father's legacy or Lakeshore Haven and vow not to contest anything in the future." Camilla's eyes flickered with rage, but she managed a brittle smile. It was the kind of smile that hides a scream. "And if I refuse?" He tapped the folder again. "I'll make this public, turn it over to the authorities, and you'll be finished. There won't be a single developer in the state willing to work with you after this. You might even face jail time." His voice was steady, but beneath it was fire. The fire of a man who had lost too much to play nice anymore. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint clinking of cups in the lounge. Thunder mumbled in the distance, echoing the tension. Even the weather seemed to wait for her response. Finally, Camilla spoke, her voice low and full of venom. "Fine, you win this round, Nathaniel. But don't think I'll forget." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but fury. She wasn't done, not really. He retrieved the folder, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I don't care about your grudges anymore. As long as my family is safe, you can hate me all you want." Camilla snatched her purse and stormed out of the lounge. Her heels struck the floor like gunshots, drawing a few curious glances, but she didn't look back. Nathaniel watched her go. Exhaling a breath he felt like he'd been holding for months. This nightmare was nearly over. But in the back of his mind, he knew people like Camilla didn't vanish quietly. They recoiled, and then waited for their next strike. Later that evening, Nathaniel returned to the mansion that had been a silent refuge for Evelyn since the marriage fiasco. Rose Fairchild had helped watch over her during the day. The baby's nursery was almost complete, pastel walls decorated with whimsical animal decals. It was the one room untouched by all the chaos, a promise of hope. He found Evelyn upstairs, sitting in the rocking chair, her eyes distant. When she saw him in the doorway, she rose uncertainly, her face a mixture of longing and sorrow. "Is it done?" she asked quietly. Nathaniel nodded. "I've got the annulment papers. Camilla is signing them first thing tomorrow. She won't bother us again." Evelyn's breath caught, tears pooling in her eyes. She reached for him, and he closed the distance, wrapping his arms around her. He clutched her like a man returning from war, bruised but home. The floodgates burst, and she sobbed against his chest, tears of relief, grief, and exhaustion. He held her, stroking her hair gently, murmuring apologies for everything she'd endured. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into her ear. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just couldn't see a better way to protect you and the baby." She looked up at him, eyes swollen from crying, but love shining through. "I understand. I hate that you had to do it, but I understand." Just then, Evelyn winced, a gasp escaping her lips. Her hand flew to her belly. Nathaniel's eyes widened, his pulse surged. For a moment, the world fell silent. Is it time?" She nodded, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "I think so. The baby's coming." A whirlwind followed, frantic calls to the hospital, a rush to get her in the car, and a tense drive through Sapphire Grove's winding roads. The city that had watched their struggle now faded behind them as headlights cut through the pre-dawn mist. In the bright lights of the maternity ward, the hours blurred, punctuated by pain, contractions, and urgent medical instructions. Nathaniel stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement. His voice was hoarse, his grip firm, his eyes never leaving hers. "Breathe with me," he whispered. "We're almost there." Finally, with a few last pushes, the hospital room filled with the sound of a newborn's wail, high, piercing, and miraculous. It was the most beautiful noise he'd ever heard, a cry that shattered every shadow Camilla had cast. A girl, their daughter. She emerged into the world, tiny and perfect, placed gently into Evelyn's trembling arms. Her skin was soft as silk, her cries already fading as she nestled into her mother's chest. Both parents stared in awestruck wonder, tears of joy streaming down their faces. They weren't just tears of happiness, they were release, relief, and rebirth. Nathaniel pressed his lips to Evelyn's forehead. "You did it," he whispered, voice quavering. "She's here, and she's everything." She held their baby, who quieted at the sound of her mother's heartbeat, the same rhythm that had kept her safe through every storm. In that moment, the months of fear and turmoil seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound sense of relief and hope. Camilla's manipulations, the forced marriage, the heartbreak, they were all overshadowed by the radiant miracle of new life. The darkness had been real, but this light was undeniable. And so Nathaniel Cross returned to his true wife, free from the clutches of a mistress who had tried to tear them apart. While Sapphire Grove might buzz with gossip for a while, a new beginning lay in the arms of their newborn daughter. The future was finally theirs to shape, together. No more schemes, no more fear, just love and the life they were meant to build. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster tale of betrayal, blackmail, and redemption. We've witnessed how a cunning mistress, fueled by ambition, nearly destroyed a millionaire's life. But in the end, true love and determination prevailed. Nathaniel refused to let adversity break his devotion to Evelyn, and despite their darkest hour, they emerged stronger than ever, welcoming their precious baby girl into a fresh start. Sapphire Grove may continue to chatter, but the Cross family has proven that no amount of gossip or manipulation can shatter a bond forged by genuine love and hope. If you enjoyed this dramatic journey and want to see more stories packed with intense twists, unexpected turns, and heartwarming resolutions, remember to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more riveting tales. Until next time, stay tuned for another story that dares to dive deep into the complexities of human relationships. Nathan Carter strode through O'Hare International Airport that Friday morning, his polished shoes clicking against the sleek tile floor. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, he adjusted the strap of his leather briefcase and checked the time on his Rolex for what felt like the 100th time. Another business trip, another flight, another empty hotel room. He exhaled heavily. Success had given him everything, except the one thing that still haunted him. Then, in the middle of the bustling crowd, something made him freeze. A woman walked past him, her long brown hair swaying as she gripped the hand of a young boy, no more than 10 years old. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He recognized that face. His chest tightened. "Emily?" he murmured under his breath, barely aware he'd spoken. It wasn't just the shock of seeing her. It was the boy. He had the same green eyes Nathan saw in the mirror every morning. The same unruly blonde hair that refused to be tamed. Even the way the child walked, shoulders slightly hunched, a familiar rhythm in his steps, sent a jolt through Nathan's core. The past hit him like a sledgehammer. 10 years ago. A cold apartment, a single sheet of paper left on the kitchen counter. He could still see Emily, curled under the blanket, fast asleep, oblivious to the fact that her life was about to be torn apart. He had walked away without looking back, convinced he was making the right choice. But now, standing in the middle of this airport, staring at a boy who was unmistakably his, the weight of that decision crushed him. Nathan's legs felt unsteady, but he forced himself forward, his pulse hammering. He had to talk to her. He had to understand. Was this really his child? Had he abandoned not just a wife, but a son he never even knew existed? The crowd swelled around him, swallowing the space between them. He surged forward, pushing past hurried travelers, weaving between rolling suitcases, his heartbeat drumming in his ears. "Emily," he called out, his voice lost in the chaotic hum of the terminal. He tried again, louder, desperate. The moment he broke through the throng of people, he scanned the area frantically. They were gone. Nathan spun in place, searching every face, every departing figure. But Emily and the boy had vanished into the sea of travelers. His chest heaved. He couldn't lose them. Not again. "Sir, are you all right?" A concerned flight attendant placed a hand on his arm. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it, still scanning the terminal. It buzzed again. "Vanessa?" His stomach twisted. He clenched his jaw and let it ring. "Sir, your flight is boarding," the attendant reminded him, gesturing toward the gate. Nathan glanced at the departure screen, then back at the terminal entrance. The decision that had haunted him for a decade was no longer a memory. It was standing right in front of him, and this time he wasn't going to walk away. Nathan Carter's gaze flicked between the boarding gate and the terminal entrance. His flight was minutes from departure, the last call echoing through the speakers. He gripped the handle of his briefcase, knuckles white. For a decade, he had convinced himself that the past belonged exactly where he had left it, buried, untouched. But now, standing here, a single moment had unraveled everything. "I'm not getting on that plane." His voice sounded distant, even to himself. The flight attendant hesitated, but Nathan wasn't waiting for approval. He turned on his heel, heart pounding, legs carrying him forward before his mind could protest. His pulse drummed in his ears as he reached the curb outside the airport. A cab pulled up. "Downtown," he instructed curtly, sliding into the back seat. The city blurred past, skyscrapers towering like silent sentinels over the streets below. The Chicago skyline, once a symbol of everything he had worked for, now felt oppressive, suffocating. His phone vibrated insistently in his pocket. "Vanessa." He let it ring. Instead, he dialed a different number, one he hadn't called in years. "Mark, it's Nathan." His voice came out hoarse. "I need you to find someone." A long pause, then a measured response. "Who?" Nathan swallowed hard. He forced himself to say it. "Emily, a child." The words barely left his lips before a crushing weight settled in his chest. His son. A boy he had never known. A life he had never touched. Guilt coiled tightly around his ribs. Mark exhaled. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan stared out at the city, 100 memories flashing through his mind. No, he wasn't sure. But he knew one thing. He couldn't pretend this didn't matter. The cab wove through the streets, the honking horns and rushing pedestrians a familiar distant hum. His mind drifted back. 10 years, another city, another version of himself. A Manhattan hotel bar. Nathan sat at the counter, drowning in frustration. Another failed deal, another step further from the life he had envisioned. He ordered a drink, rubbing his temples. That's when she appeared. Vanessa. She moved with an effortless confidence, slipping onto the bar stool beside him. "Tough day?" she asked, a knowing smile playing at her lips. That conversation changed everything. Vanessa spoke of wealth, of power, of a life where men like him didn't just exist, they conquered. She made him feel small, but also hungry for more. In the months that followed, their encounters became frequent, calculated. "You deserve better, Nathan," she had whispered once, eyes gleaming. "With the right people, you could be a millionaire." And he had believed her. Emily, with her quiet dreams and steady devotion, had seemed too content, too accepting of a life Nathan no longer wanted. She didn't understand his hunger. "Why do you need more?" she had asked one night, confusion shadowing her features. "Aren't we happy?" But happiness wasn't enough. Nathan had wanted more, and in chasing it, he had walked away from the one thing he could never replace. Nathan had once believed that ambition alone could fill the void inside him. The pursuit of wealth, success, and influence had consumed him, pushing him further from the life he had once shared with Emily. Vanessa had been the embodiment of that dream, ruthless, powerful, and intoxicating. On a crisp autumn night, that hunger for more had led him to a decision that changed everything. Emily had fallen asleep, unaware of the storm about to unravel her world. Nathan had stood by the doorway, watching her peaceful breathing for what felt like the last time. Then, with quiet precision, he packed a suitcase, leaving behind only a single sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. "Emily, I can't stay. I need more than this life can offer. Please don't try to find me." He had walked out without a glance back, his pulse steady, his mind numbed by the conviction that he was choosing the life he deserved. The tears that threatened to fall were buried beneath cold resolve. By the time he boarded his flight, the only thing he carried was the belief that he was moving forward. What he hadn't known, what he never even considered, was that only days later, Emily would stand alone in their dimly lit bathroom, staring at a pregnancy test with shaking hands. Her reflection blurred through unshed tears, her future unraveling in an instant. She had cried for hours, clutching the proof of the life growing inside her, torn between devastation and the desperate need to survive. Now, 10 years later, Nathan sat in the back of a taxi, suffocated by the weight of his past. The streets of Chicago blurred outside the window, the towering skyline once a symbol of everything he had built, now a hollow reminder of all he had lost. How could I have been so blind, so cruel? The cab slowed to a stop outside a quiet office tucked between steel and glass buildings. Nathan exhaled sharply, paying the fare with unsteady hands before stepping onto the sidewalk. He had spent years running. It was time to face what he had left behind. Inside, Mark Reynolds leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze fixed on Nathan as he listened to the rushed, breathless explanation. "I saw Emily. At the airport. She wasn't alone." Nathan swallowed hard. "There was a boy. He looked just like me." Mark exhaled, folding his arms. "You realize what this means, don't you? If you go down this path, there's no turning back." Nathan dragged a hand down his face. "I know, but I need to find them." Mark studied him for a long moment before nodding. "All right, tell me everything you remember. Her last address, her job, anything that can help." Nathan shut his eyes, forcing himself to recall the pieces of Emily's life that he had once dismissed. She was a teacher. In elementary school, north side of the city. Mark jotted it down, his eyes flickering to the phone buzzing on Nathan's desk. "Vanessa?" Nathan ignored it. He already knew why she was calling. Mark sighed, tapping his pen on the desk. "This will take time. A few days at least." Nathan nodded, his jaw tight. "Do whatever it takes. Money isn't a problem." As he stepped back into the crisp evening air, Chicago felt foreign, unfamiliar in a way he had never known before. He had spent years believing he had everything. Now, for the first time, he realized he had nothing. And for the first time, he knew exactly what he had to do. Chicago stretched endlessly before him, its streets teeming with life, yet Nathan had never felt more isolated. The city, once a symbol of his triumphs, now loomed over him, indifferent to the turmoil churning inside. He had chased success for years, convinced it would fulfill him, but at this moment, he would trade it all for a single chance to rewrite his past. He had made his choice a decade ago, and now, It was time to face the consequences. Finding Emily and the boy wasn't just a priority, it was the only thing that mattered. He prayed he wasn't too late. For days, Nathan stayed in a luxury hotel downtown, pacing between calls from Mark. Sleep was an afterthought, replaced by an unrelenting restlessness. Each night he found himself by the window, staring out at the city lights, wondering if somewhere in the quiet suburbs his son, was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the man who had abandoned him before he even took his first breath. Meanwhile, in a modest home on the outskirts of the city, Emily moved through her morning routine, the familiarity of it grounding her. The house was small but warm, filled with quiet love. The only sound that broke the morning calm was the chatter of cartoons drifting from the living room. "Jake, breakfast?" she called, setting a plate of pancakes on the table. A 10-year-old boy with messy blonde curls darted into the kitchen, his green eyes shining. "Pancakes, yes." Emily smiled, ruffling his already wild hair, but the moment her fingers brushed through it, something in her chest ached. The resemblance was undeniable. She'd spent years trying to ignore it, but every day, in a tilt of his head or a flicker of his expression, she saw echoes of Nathan. As Jake happily devoured his breakfast, Emily drifted into the memories she rarely let herself visit. The early years had been nothing short of survival. Long nights, endless worry, a constant battle to provide. A painful image surfaced. 8 months pregnant, sitting on the cold bathroom floor, surrounded by unopened bills. Tears had fallen freely that night, fear creeping into every corner of her thoughts. She had felt utterly alone. But she hadn't been defeated. "We did it, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing her hand over Jake's forehead. He barely noticed, too focused on his syrup-drenched pancakes. A knock at the door pulled her back to the present. Daniel stood there, his easy smile melting away the morning chill. "Morning, my loves," he greeted, pressing a kiss to Emily's forehead before wrapping Jake in a quick hug. Emily exhaled, gratitude swelling in her chest. Daniel had walked into their lives when she had nothing left to offer. He had never hesitated, never questioned. He had simply been there. Across the city, Nathan's phone rang. "I found her." Mark's voice was steady. "She's still in Evanston, same neighborhood, small house." Nathan's stomach twisted. So close. After all these years, his grip tightened around the phone. And the boy? A pause. Then the words that sent his world spinning. "She has a son, Jake, 10 years old. She's raised him alone." Nathan inhaled sharply. The past he had buried had finally surfaced. And there was no turning back. "She has a son you've never met, who grew up without you." Nathan's grip on the phone tightened as Mark continued. "There's something else. Emily has been with someone for 2 years, a man named Daniel Hayes. From what I've found, he's very involved in their lives." A sharp pang cut through Nathan's chest, unexpected and unwelcome. What right did he have to feel jealous? He had been the one to walk away. But the idea of another man stepping into his place, of his son growing up calling someone else dad, made his breath come short. On the other side of the city, in the sleek, modern mansion they shared, Vanessa paced across the polished marble floor, irritation flickering in her every movement. Nathan hadn't answered her calls in days. First, he had missed a critical flight. Now he was completely absent. "Something is wrong," she muttered under her breath, her mind calculating. Nathan was many things: obsessive, ambitious, relentless, but he was never careless. His silence meant something. And Vanessa hated anything she couldn't control. Across Chicago, in a quiet Evanston neighborhood, Emily's morning unfolded as usual. Daniel adjusted Jake's backpack while she packed his lunch, the rhythm of their routine familiar, steady. "Don't forget, dinner with my parents tonight," Daniel reminded her, brushing a kiss against her temple. Emily smiled, but a restlessness had taken root inside her. Ever since the airport, the image of the man she had seen, the man who looked too much like Nathan, refused to leave her. A feeling, almost like a warning, whispered in the back of her mind. Something was coming. That same sense of inevitability gripped Nathan as he drove slowly down the tree-lined street Mark had given him. His pulse pounded in his ears as his eyes locked onto the house. It was simple, but inviting. A small swing swayed gently in the breeze. Then a child's bike leaned against the porch railing. It was a life he had never been part of, one he had forfeited the night he left. He parked across the street, his fingers clenching the steering wheel. What could he even say? How did a man ask forgiveness for 10 years of silence? For missing a childhood he should have been there for? Before he could answer that, the front door opened. Emily stepped outside, the golden afternoon light catching in her hair. She looked different, but not in a way that time alone could explain. Stronger, more certain. And then he appeared. Jake. Nathan's world stopped. The boy laughed as he bounded down the steps, the sound so natural, so effortless. Nathan drank in every detail, his messy blonde curls, the way his green eyes sparked with curiosity, a mirror of his own childhood self. And then Daniel followed, ruffling Jake's hair as they walked toward the car. They looked happy. Like a real family. Nathan exhaled sharply, sinking lower in his seat. Guilt twisted through him, but another feeling burned just as fiercely. Determination. He had lost 10 years. He couldn't lose another moment. But how could he step into their world without tearing it apart? The next few days blurred together. He couldn't stay away. He parked a few houses down, watching their lives unfold from a distance. Jake practicing tricks on his bike, Emily tending to the flowers, Daniel bringing home groceries. Each moment, each smile felt like a glimpse into the life he had abandoned. Then, one afternoon, he saw Emily watering the plants. The can slipped from her grasp, water spilling across the pavement. Without thinking, Nathan murmured, "Emily." She turned. For a split second, her expression was unreadable. Then her eyes locked onto his and everything changed. Her body tensed, anger flashing in her gaze as she strode toward him. The weight of a decade of unanswered questions fueling her steps. "What are you doing here?" Emily's breath caught as she locked eyes with the man she never expected to see again. "Nathan," she said, barely above a whisper, her voice trembling with disbelief and fury. He took a hesitant step forward. "Emily, I saw you at the airport with Jake. I had to." "Don't." Her voice was sharp, unyielding. "Don't you dare say his name." The air between them crackled with tension. Nathan faltered, the weight of a decade pressing against him. Across the street, curious neighbors peeked from behind curtains, drawn to the quiet eruption unfolding in their peaceful suburb. "Please," he tried again, voice thick with desperation. "I know I can't change the past, but I need to know. Jake, he's my son, isn't he?" Emily inhaled sharply, her chest rising and falling as she wrestled with emotions too tangled to name. Then, at last, her voice dropped to a quiet, resolute tone. "Yes, he's your biological son." Nathan felt his knees weaken. But before he could respond, Emily's next words sliced through him. "The son you abandoned before you even knew he existed." The impact was immediate. Nathan swallowed hard, his pulse a steady drum in his ears. "I didn't know," he murmured. "If I had." Emily's bitter laugh cut through the space between them. "If you had known?" Her eyes flashed with something between anger and disbelief. "And then what, Nathan? You would have stayed?" "Don't fool yourself. You made your choice 10 years ago." His hands curled into fists, not in anger, but in helplessness. "Let me see him. I know I don't deserve it. But, stop." The word came like a quiet explosion, her voice firm but shaking. "You're right. You don't deserve it." Nathan clenched his jaw. He had prepared himself for rejection, but the finality in her voice made it feel like a door being slammed shut. "Jake has a good life," Emily continued, her voice softer now but no less unwavering. "He's happy. He has a family who loves him. I won't let you take that away from him." A car pulled up beside them. Daniel stepped out, his expression shifting from confusion to concern as he took in the scene before him. "Everything okay?" he asked, moving instinctively toward Emily, his presence protective but not aggressive. Nathan stiffened, something bitter twisting in his stomach. This man, this stranger, was living the life that should have been his. Emily didn't look away from Nathan. "Everything's fine, he was just leaving." Daniel didn't look convinced. His gaze flicked between them, his brow furrowing. "Do you two know each other?" Before Emily could respond, the familiar screech of brakes filled the air. A school bus pulled up at the corner. Nathan's breath hitched. "Jake." Emily stiffened. "Nathan, go. Now." But Nathan couldn't move. His eyes were locked onto the boy stepping off the bus. The same green eyes, the same unruly blonde hair, his reflection in miniature. For a moment he forgot to breathe. Panic flashed across Emily's face. She took a step toward Jake before he could get closer. "Mom, everything okay?" Jake's voice carried a hint of concern as he noticed the tension lingering in the air. Emily forced a smile, her voice steadier than she felt. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Head inside. Daniel will help you with your homework. Jake hesitated, his gaze flicking toward the unfamiliar man standing nearby. There was curiosity in his expression, but he didn't question it. Okay. He disappeared inside, Daniel following a moment later, but not before giving Nathan one last wary glance. Emily remained on the porch, her posture rigid. Leave, Nathan. Her voice was quiet but firm, her eyes reflecting the weight of years lost. Whatever you think this is, it's too late. Nathan stood there, frozen, watching the door close behind the son he had never known. For the first time he understood. Walking back into their lives wouldn't just be difficult. It might be impossible. Don't come back, please. Emily's voice trembled, but her resolve didn't waver. Nathan stepped forward, the weight of her words sinking into him. Emily, no. Her tone was sharp, cutting through his sentence. You don't get to do this. You have no idea what we've been through, what Jake has been through. I won't let you destroy everything now. She turned away, her grip tightening on the door before she shut it firmly behind her. Nathan stood motionless on the sidewalk, his pulse pounding in his ears. His son had been right there, so close yet still unreachable. Inside, Emily pressed her back against the door, her breath shaky. The reality of the moment settled in, making her limbs feel heavy. Footsteps approached. Emily? She looked up to see Daniel standing in the hallway, concern etched on his face. Who was that? His voice was steady, but his eyes searched hers for answers. Emily swallowed hard, the truth sitting heavy on her tongue. It was Nathan, she admitted. Jake's father. Daniel stiffened. What? He shook his head slightly, trying to grasp the words. Why now? Emily exhaled, rubbing her hands over her face. I don't know. I never wanted to have this conversation. Meanwhile, Nathan sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to truly face what he had done. His mind spiraled back, 5 years before he left. Emily had come home beaming, thrilled about a promotion at the school. That's great, darling, he had muttered without looking up from his newspaper. But don't get too excited. It's just an elementary school. Even now, he could still see the way her excitement had dimmed. Another memory surfaced. Emily talking about saving for a master's degree. He had laughed. Why? It's not like you'll make much more money teaching kids to color. Shame clawed at him. He had been so blind. So dismissive. Back at the house, Emily and Daniel sat at the kitchen table, their voices low. Do you think we should tell him? Daniel asked, his fingers gently brushing over hers. Emily sighed, exhaustion evident in her posture. I don't know. He deserves the truth, but what if it hurts him? What if Nathan disappears again? Daniel pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. The next morning, Jake padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Daniel stood at the stove, with flipping pancakes. Where's Mom? Jake asked through a yawn. Daniel set a plate in front of him. She had to leave early. Jake poked at his pancakes, his brows drawing together. Daniel? Yeah, buddy. Jake hesitated. Can I ask you something? Daniel smiled. Of course. Jake glanced up, his voice quieter. It's about my real dad. Daniel's hand froze midway to his coffee cup. What do you want to know? Jake studied him, his green eyes filled with uncertainty. Why did he leave? Didn't he want me? Daniel felt his heart clench. He set down his cup, turning fully toward Jake. Hey, Jake. It's nothing like that. It's complicated, but it has nothing to do with you, okay? Jake hesitated, his small fingers tracing the rim of his juice glass. He nodded, but the doubt in his young eyes lingered. Outside, Nathan stood in the shadows, watching through the window. His chest ached as he saw the easy, familiar way Daniel ruffled Jake's hair, the way the boy leaned into him with the trust of a son who had never known another father. Nathan clenched his jaw. He had no one to blame but himself, but he wasn't walking away this time. He waited until Jake left for school, his hands shoved into his pockets as he loitered near the sidewalk. When the boy passed by, Nathan took a breath and stepped forward. Hey, kid. Jake slowed, glancing up at him warily. Nathan held up a soccer ball. This yours? Jake frowned. No. Nathan shrugged, tossing it lightly in his hands. Thought maybe it rolled out of your yard. You play? Jake hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, sometimes. With Daniel. Nathan forced a smile, ignoring the way those words stung. I used to play it all the time when I was your age. Something shifted in Jake's expression, the slightest curiosity creeping in. They chatted for a few minutes, nothing deep, nothing revealing. But for Nathan, it was everything. He drank in every second, memorizing the way his son's nose scrunched when he was thinking, the way his voice lifted slightly at the end of a sentence. "I gotta go," Jake said eventually, glancing toward the approaching school bus. "I'll be late." Nathan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Of course, don't let me keep you." Jake gave him one last uncertain glance before jogging off. Nathan exhaled, feeling both exhilarated and utterly hollow. He had spoken to his son, but he was still a stranger to him. Across town, in a sleek high-rise overlooking the Chicago skyline, Vanessa Reed stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a freshly printed report in her hand. She scanned the page, her grip tightening. "Nathan Carter has a son." Her lips curled in cold amusement. "Well, well," she murmured. "You've been keeping secrets." Everything made sense now. His sudden absences, the distracted look in his eyes. He thought he could rewrite his life, slip away unnoticed. A slow smirk played on her lips. "You want to throw everything away for some school teacher and a kid?" She let out a humorless chuckle. "Adorable." She picked up her phone, dialing swiftly. "Mr. Ramirez? Find out everything you can about this boy, Jake Carter, every detail, and prepare the divorce papers. I'll be needing them soon." Vanessa Reed never lost, and she wasn't about to start now. Meanwhile, in Evanston, Emily lay awake in bed, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. Her mind refused to quiet, replaying every moment of the past 24 hours. Nathan's sudden reappearance, the look in his eyes. She had spent 10 years protecting Jake from the truth, but she knew she couldn't keep it from him forever. The early morning light bled through the blinds. She sat up, her decision made. "Jake, sweetheart," she called softly. "Can we talk?" Emily's voice was soft, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. She sat beside Jake on the couch, hands folded in her lap, as if bracing herself. Jake looked up, still groggy from breakfast, but something in her expression made him set his spoon down. "Sure." Emily inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "Do you remember when you asked about your father?" His brow furrowed slightly. "Yeah." "Why?" She hesitated for just a second. "He's in town. He wants to meet you." Silence. Jake blinked, his entire body stiffening as the words settled. "He's alive?" Emily nodded, her heart tightening. "Yes." "And?" Jake shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His expression shifted, confusion melting into something sharper. "Wait, so he just left us? And now, out of nowhere, he wants to see me?" Emily reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Jake, it's not that simple." His voice rose, anger laced with something more fragile. "No, it is simple. He left, and now, what? He suddenly cares. I don't want to meet him." Emily fought to keep her voice steady. "Sweetheart, please try to understand." "Understand what? That my real dad is a coward?" The words hit harder than she expected. Jake turned, storming toward his room, and before she could stop him, the door slammed. Emily exhaled shakily, sinking back onto the couch. Tears blurred her vision, but she let them fall. She had known this conversation would be difficult, but nothing prepared her for the hurt in her son's voice. Across the city, Nathan stood in the middle of a sleek, modern penthouse, his gaze locked on Vanessa. She leaned against the bar, her manicured nails drumming against a crystal glass of red wine. "Why are you here, Nathan?" Her voice was eerily calm. "I thought you were busy playing house with your little secret family." Nathan stiffened. "How did you find out?" Vanessa smiled, a slow, knowing smirk. "Oh, sweetheart, I know everything." She swirled the wine in her glass. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Nathan exhaled, his jaw tightening. "I'm here to tell you it's over." The amusement faded from her expression. "Over? I can't do this anymore. I can't live a lie." For a moment she said nothing, then her lips curled into something cruel. "You actually think you can just walk away? After everything I've done for you?" Nathan squared his shoulders. "All you did was manipulate me." His voice was firm. "You pushed me to abandon Emily, and I let you." Vanessa let out a hollow laugh. "Don't act like a victim, Nathan. You chose money and power. I simply opened the door." Shame burned in his chest, but he refused to let it control him. He had spent years running from his past. Not anymore. He turned for the door. "This is done." Her voice sliced through the air. "You leave, and I'll expose everything. Every backroom deal. Every bribe. You will lose everything, Nathan." He hesitated. She meant it. Back in Evanston, Daniel stepped through the front door, shaking off the cold. The moment he saw Emily curled on the couch, shoulders tense, eyes red-rimmed, he knew something was wrong. He crossed the room in an instant, kneeling beside her. "Emily, what happened?" Daniel's eyes darkened with concern as he took in Emily's exhausted expression. "What happened?" She exhaled shakily, rubbing her forehead. "I told Jake the truth about Nathan." Daniel stepped closer, his arms wrapping around her, warm and steady, but Emily barely relaxed. "Did I do the right thing?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel hesitated. "I think so, but now Nathan is going to be part of our lives." Emily heard the worry beneath his words. "He's Jake's father," Daniel said carefully. "But you're the one who's always been here." She nodded, but the weight in her chest remained. That night, Nathan wandered the empty streets of Chicago, his thoughts colliding in a storm of regret and determination. Vanessa's threats echoed in his mind, but worse than that were the memories creeping in, reminders of every mistake he had made. Emily's excitement when she had talked about her future. "I want to get my master's degree," she had said, her eyes bright. Nathan had barely looked up from his laptop. "Why? It's not like it'll change anything." The memory burned now. Another flash. Emily exhausted after work, longing for support. And him, too, caught up in chasing success to care. Guilt gnawed at him. His arrogance, his selfishness. It hadn't just ended a marriage. It had robbed him of years with his son. He found himself standing outside Emily's house, staring at the window where Jake's light had just gone out. So close, yet an entire decade apart. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words feeling too small, too late. There was so much to fix, so much damage to undo. But for the first time in years, he wasn't running from it. With a final look at the house, Nathan turned and disappeared into the night. The next afternoon, he found himself outside Jake's school, his pulse hammering in his chest. Then, there he was. Before he could second-guess himself, Nathan stepped forward. "Hello, Jake." The boy turned, eyes narrowing. "Do you remember me? The guy with the soccer ball?" Nathan tried to keep his voice light. Jake crossed his arms. "Yeah, what do you want?" Nathan hesitated. "I just wanted to see how you were doing." Jake's expression didn't change. "I'm fine." Then he walked away without another word. Nathan stood frozen, the hollow ache in his chest expanding. Later, back at his hotel, he sat alone, staring at the city lights. And for the first time in years, he let the weight of it all crash over him. He had spent a lifetime chasing the wrong things. And now, the only thing he truly wanted, the one thing that mattered, was the farthest out of reach. Across town, Emily had seen everything. She had watched Nathan's clumsy attempt to connect with their son. A part of her wanted to slam the door on his presence, to protect Jake from inevitable disappointment. But another part, the part that remembered the man Nathan had once been, hesitated. Emily barely recognized the man Nathan had become. He lingered on the edges of their lives, watching, hesitant, desperate to bridge a gap that had been carved too deep. "He's trying, Jake," she said one evening, her voice gentle but careful. Jake frowned, pushing his dinner around with his fork. "Then why didn't he care before?" Emily sighed, searching for the right words. "People make mistakes, sweetheart. Sometimes, really big ones." Jake's grip tightened on his fork. "Mistakes hurt." His voice was quiet, but laced with something deeper, anger, sadness, something Emily couldn't quite name. She reached for him, but he shrugged away, standing abruptly. "I don't want to talk about it." Emily watched as he retreated down the hall, her heart aching for the boy caught between a past he never knew and a present that suddenly felt uncertain. Meanwhile, Daniel sensed the shift. The past was no longer a distant memory. It was creeping into the home he had helped build. On a cool autumn night, he made a choice. He took Emily to a quiet, candlelit restaurant, and as the city glowed outside the window, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Kneeling, he held it out to her. "Will you marry me?" Emily's breath caught. Daniel had been her safe place, her steady presence. She loved him. But the proposal, coming in the middle of this storm, felt overwhelming. She swallowed hard. "I need to think." A flicker of disappointment crossed Daniel's face before he nodded. "Take all the time you need." Days later, Jake rode his bike down their quiet street, lost in thought. He didn't see the car coming. Nathan, watching from afar, reacted before he could think. He sprinted forward, his heart hammering, and shoved Jake out of the way. They tumbled onto the grass as the car screeched past, its horn blaring. Nathan's pulse pounded. "Are you okay?" Jake sat up, breathing hard. "Yeah, thanks." For the first time, he really looked at Nathan, his expression unreadable, hesitant. Nathan wanted to tell him the truth. That he had never stopped thinking about him. That he wished he could take back every mistake, but he didn't. Instead, he helped Jake up and stepped back, watching as the boy ran home without another word. Meanwhile, across the city, Vanessa was setting her plan into motion. She hired investigators, her voice cold over the phone. "Find everything. Every deal. Every cent. I want him destroyed." Nathan, unaware of her scheming, spent another sleepless night drowning in self-reflection. The money, the power, it all felt meaningless now. Wandering the dim streets of Chicago, he stopped in front of a small toy shop. In the window, a wooden train sat on display, just like the one he had cherished as a child. A lump formed in his throat. Birthdays, holidays, the moments he had missed. He couldn't change the past, but he could fight for a future. Even if Emily never took him back, even if Jake never forgave him, he would prove he was here to stay. With newfound determination, Nathan returned to his hotel. He picked up the phone, his grip firm. "Francisco, it's Nathan. I need your help with some legal matters." Nathan had always known the truth would come crashing down on him eventually, but he never expected it to happen like this. The weight of the past bore down on him as he watched Jake's face twist with realization. The boy stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at him like a stranger. "You're my dad?" The words cut through the crisp afternoon air, raw and disbelieving. Emily's breath hitched. "Jake, let me explain." But Jake's expression had already shifted from shock to betrayal. "You lied to me," he choked out. "You let him get close, and you never told me." Nathan took a step forward, his voice calm but pleading. "Jake, your mom was trying to protect you. This is my fault, not hers." Jake's small hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You left us. You never wanted me. Why are you even here now?" The confrontation unraveled with jagged emotions, Jake's voice cracking between fury and hurt, Emily struggling to keep him from spiraling, and Nathan standing in the wreckage of his own mistakes. Hours later, alone in his office, Nathan made the hardest call of his life. His fingers hovered over the keypad before he dialed. "Mr. Ramirez, this is Nathan Carter. I need to confess illegal business activities I've been involved in over the past decade." The words tasted bitter, but he forced them out. He had spent years justifying his choices. But in the end, no amount of wealth or power could outweigh the shame he carried. He would lose everything. But maybe, just maybe, he would regain the only thing that mattered. At Emily's house, Daniel arrived in the middle of the storm. He took one look at her tear-streaked face, and Nathan standing stiffly nearby, and his chest tightened. "What the hell is going on?" Emily's throat burned, and then, before she could stop herself, the words tumbled out. "Daniel, I can't marry you." Silence. Daniel flinched as if she had struck him. "Because of him?" He jerked his head toward Nathan, his voice raw. Emily swallowed hard. "No, because of me. Because of Jake. There are things I need to fix before I can move forward. I can't bring you into this mess." For a moment, Daniel just stared at her, his jaw clenched, his breathing heavy. Then he stepped back. "I hope you figure it out, Emily." And then he was gone. The next morning, Nathan's world shattered. The headlines spread like wildfire. "Nathan Carter confesses to corporate fraud, business tycoon under federal investigation." Vanessa had made good on her threat. And just like that, everything he had built crumbled to dust. Reporters swarmed outside Emily's house, their voices a chaotic storm of questions and camera flashes. "Emily, did you know about Nathan Carter's fraud? How long have you been hiding the truth about your son's father?" Emily's stomach twisted as she shut the curtains, shielding Jake from the relentless chaos outside. "Mom, what's happening?" His voice was tight with worry. She turned to him, keeping her voice steady. "It's complicated, sweetheart, but I promise we're going to be okay." Across the city, Nathan sat in the dim light of his hotel room, watching his empire collapse piece by piece. His assets frozen, former allies cutting ties, and the terrifying reality of prison loomed closer. With a deep breath, he dialed Emily's number. "I'm so sorry," he said the moment she answered. "I never wanted this to touch you or Jake." Emily sighed, exhaustion seeping into her voice. "But it has, Nathan, and now we have to figure out where to go from here." Nathan clenched his jaw. I'll fix this, Emily. I swear I will. That night, the flashing lights from the news crews still spilled across the front yard as Emily sat beside Jake on his bed. She ran her fingers through his hair searching for words. I know this is hard, she said softly, but your father is trying to do the right thing. Jake hesitated. Is he going to jail? Emily's chest tightened. I don't know, baby, but no matter what happens, we're in this together. Always. Meanwhile, alone in his hotel room, Nathan stared at his reflection in the darkened window. For years, he had dodged consequences, convinced himself that wealth and power could shield him from guilt. But tonight, he felt none of that protection. With resolve hardening in his chest, he picked up the phone. This is Nathan Carter. I'm ready to turn myself in. The sun had barely risen when Emily walked into Jake's room the next morning, only to stop cold. His bed was empty, the window slightly open. Panic surged through her as her gaze landed on the crumpled note by the nightstand. I need to think. Don't look for me. Her hands shook as she grabbed her phone. Nathan, she shouted the moment he answered. Jake is gone. Nathan felt the ground drop beneath him. I'm coming now. By the time he reached the house, Emily was already on the porch, her face streaked with fear. For a moment, all their past mistakes faded. Nothing mattered except finding their son. We'll find him, Nathan swore, gripping her hands tightly. Together they set off, searching every street and park, their fear growing with each empty turn. Emily's voice trembled. What if we're too late? Nathan's jaw tightened, his grip firm. We won't be. We're going to bring him home. We can't lose hope. Nathan's voice was steady, but the desperation in his eyes betrayed him. They searched for hours, combing through familiar streets and shadowed alleyways. With each passing minute, panic grew. Emily's mind was a storm of memories, moments of Jake's childhood she had clung to. The way he used to curl into her lap after a nightmare, the way his small hands would reach for hers in a crowd. But tonight, he was out there alone, and she wasn't there to hold him. Nathan fought his own ghosts. He remembered the first time he held Jake in the hospital, the weight of his tiny body against his chest, the overwhelming love, the paralyzing fear. And then, he had run. He wasn't going to run this time. The sky darkened, the air turning sharp with the bite of nightfall when Daniel arrived, breathless. I came as soon as I heard. Emily looked at him, surprised, then grateful. Despite everything, he was here. She touched his arm lightly. Thank you. The three of them split up, covering more ground as the cold set in. Then Nathan spotted something. At the old park, the one he had once taken Emily to before everything fell apart, a small figure sat on a swing, motionless. Jake. Nathan's chest tightened as he approached. Jake. The boy didn't move at first. Then slowly he looked up. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes hollow with exhaustion. Why did you come back? His voice was hoarse. Nathan's breath hitched. He sank onto the swing beside him, choosing his words carefully. Because I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left, and I've regretted it every single day since. Jake's lip trembled. You hurt Mom. You left us. Nathan's throat burned. I know. His voice was raw. And I can't change the past. But I can be here now. I can try to be better. Even if you never forgive me, I need you to know I love you, Jake. I always have. Footsteps pounded against the pavement. Jake. Emily's voice cracked as she ran toward them. Before Jake could react, she wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly, as if she could shield him from every pain he had ever felt. But before relief could settle, another voice cut through the air. So this is what you threw it all away for? Vanessa. She stepped forward, eyes glinting with fury, lips curled in disgust. This pathetic little family? Nathan exhaled sharply, shifting to stand between her and Emily. Enough, Vanessa, it's over. She let out a bitter laugh. You're going to lose everything, Nathan. Your money, your power, your name, and for what? Nathan's gaze flickered to Emily, to Jake, and then, with absolute certainty, he met Vanessa's glare. For something you never understood. His voice was firm. Real love, a real family. Her face twisted with rage. She took a step forward, but Daniel intercepted her, his stance unyielding. Leave. His voice was sharp, final. For a moment, Vanessa hesitated. Then, with a glare of pure contempt, she turned on her heel and disappeared into the night. A heavy silence followed. Nathan turned to Emily, to Jake, to Daniel. The storm hadn't passed, but this time he wasn't facing it alone. I'm sorry, Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For the hurt I caused. For the mistakes I made. For turning your lives upside down." He exhaled shakily, forcing himself to meet their eyes. "Tomorrow, I'll turn myself in. You won't have to deal with me anymore." A heavy silence settled over them. Then, to Nathan's surprise, Jake took a hesitant step forward. "You're really going to jail?" Nathan nodded. "Most likely, yes. I made bad choices, Jake, and I need to own up to them." Jake looked to his mother, uncertainty flickering across his face. Then, turning back to Nathan, his voice wavered. "But what if I want to know you better?" Nathan's breath hitched. "Hope, fragile but real. That would mean everything to me," he said carefully. "But only if it's what you want." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears as she pulled Jake close. "Whatever you decide, sweetheart, we'll be here for you." Under the quiet glow of streetlights, a fractured family began to mend. It wouldn't happen overnight. There was too much history, too much pain, but for the first time in years, there was also something else. Hope. Nathan, Emily, and Jake stood together, the space between them no longer an unbridgeable gap, but a place where healing could begin. A few steps away, Daniel watched, his expression unreadable. He had done the right thing by stepping aside. He knew that. But watching them now, he understood this was never his story to be a part of. The road ahead remained uncertain, but tonight, at least, they were no longer lost. And for now, that was enough. The sharp crack of the judge's gavel sealed Nathan's fate. Guilty of financial fraud, 2 years in prison, the loss of his wealth. Nathan took the sentence with quiet acceptance. For the first time, he was facing the consequences. No shortcuts, no escape. And strangely, he felt lighter for it. The months behind bars became a time of reckoning. Nathan didn't just serve his sentence, he rebuilt himself. He studied business ethics, mentored younger inmates, and drafted plans to support struggling entrepreneurs once he was free. True to her word, Emily allowed Jake to visit. At first, their conversations were stiff, full of hesitation. "How's school?" Nathan asked one day, voice careful, unsure of the right approach. Jake shrugged. "Had a math test? I think I did okay." Nathan smiled, warmth creeping into his voice. "You've always been smart. I'm sure you did great." Little by little, the walls between them crumbled. The questions became harder. The answers, more honest. Jake wanted to understand why Nathan left, why he never came back. And for the first time, Nathan didn't run. He faced every question, every truth. Emily watched from a distance, her heart caught between caution and hope. She had spent years protecting Jake from the past, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to let him make peace with it. "He needs you as a father," Emily said, her voice steady but her eyes cautious. "But I can't let him get hurt again." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I won't let that happen. I'll prove to you both that I've changed." Life outside the prison walls continued. After months of soul-searching and honest conversations, Emily and Daniel decided to give their relationship another chance. On a warm spring afternoon, Emily walked down the aisle in a simple yet beautiful dress. Daniel stood at the altar, his expression unwavering. Jake, standing proudly between them, held the rings with steady hands. From his small prison cell, Nathan received the news with bittersweet acceptance. A flicker of sadness, a quiet ache in his chest. But mostly relief. Emily and Jake were safe. They had love, they had stability, and that was enough. When Nathan was released, he knew he couldn't return to his old life. He was determined to rebuild, with integrity. Using his business knowledge, he began working with a nonprofit, helping small businesses get off the ground. "I want to use my skills to give back," he told Jake during one of their weekly meetups at the park. Jake, now 12, studied him for a moment before nodding. "That's pretty cool, Dad." The word sent a quiet tremor through Nathan's chest. Dad, a title he had never truly earned. But he would. Emily watched the slow transformation unfold. Her life with Daniel was stable, filled with warmth and security. Yet, Jake now had something else, his father, present and trying. A year after Nathan's release, he stood alongside Emily and Daniel at Jake's school science fair. Pride swelled in his chest as Jake finished his presentation. "I'm proud of you, son," Nathan said, his voice steady with conviction. Jake smiled, wrapping his arms around him before turning to hug Emily and Daniel. Months ago, this moment would have seemed impossible. A different kind of family, but one built on something real. Later that evening, Nathan sat alone, reflecting on the road he had traveled, the arrogance of his past, the people he had hurt, how he had once dismissed Emily's dreams, how he had underestimated her resilience. Now he saw it all. "Thank you for giving me this chance," he said when Emily arrived to pick up Jake. She met his gaze, a softness there that hadn't been before. Nathan watched as Jake got into the car, feeling something new settle in his chest. Not regret, not longing, but peace. He had lost everything once, yet somehow he had found what mattered most. The road ahead was long, but this time he was walking it with purpose, one step at a time. That night, under the golden glow of the Chicago skyline, Nathan Carter stood outside the small house that once felt unreachable to him. Tonight, everything was different. He wasn't an outsider anymore. Inside, Emily and Daniel were setting the table, their laughter mixing with the sound of dishes clinking. And there, right in the middle of it all, was Jake, his son. Nathan took a deep breath and stepped forward. As he knocked, the door opened almost immediately. "Hey, Dad." Jake's voice was steady, no longer carrying the hesitation of the past. Nathan smiled. "Hey, buddy." Emily appeared behind Jake, her expression softer than he had ever seen before. "Come in, Nathan." The words hit him deeper than he expected. It wasn't just an invitation into their home. It was an invitation back into their lives. As Nathan stepped inside, the warmth of the house surrounded him. The scent of home-cooked food, the cozy lights, things he once took for granted. Jake pulled out a chair beside him. "Sit next to me?" Nathan swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. "Of course." As they all sat together at the dinner table, a feeling settled over Nathan. Not regret, not longing, but belonging. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing something just out of reach. He had found what truly mattered. Family. And this time, he wasn't letting go. My dear friend, here we are, at the end of this story. And yet, maybe it doesn't feel like an ending. Maybe it feels like something still lingers. An emotion, a thought, a question that won't quite settle. Maybe for some of you, this story reached into the quiet places of your heart, the ones that hold love, pain, regret, and hope all at once. Maybe it stirred something familiar, a memory, a longing, a wound still healing. For others, maybe it was a lesson, a mirror held up to your own life, a reminder of what truly matters in a world that constantly tries to make us forget. I don't know what this story meant to you, but if you're still here, still listening, still feeling something, that means it mattered, and that's enough. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you focus on freedom and live with kindness, simplicity, and integrity, you will find clarity. You will keep your mind unclouded by the noise of the world, letting go of what you cannot control, understanding the fleeting nature of material things, and focusing instead on what is eternal." So much of our suffering comes from clinging to expectations, to the past, to the illusion of control. We fight battles no one else sees, against fear, doubt, loneliness. And yet, outside of us, life keeps moving. The tides rise and fall, the seasons change, the stars burn on indifferent to our worries. It's all perspective. When a tree falls in the forest, some call it destruction, but to the tiny sprouts waiting in the shadows, it's the first chance they've had to grow. Everything is connected. Everything has meaning, even if we don't understand it yet. Confucius said, "Everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it. If you look closely, you'll find it in the cracks, in the moments between heartbeats, in the quiet before the world wakes up." Pain isn't the end of the story. It never was. Marcus Aurelius asked, "Why do you see misfortune in an event rather than fortune in your ability to endure it?" Maybe the storm isn't here to break you. Maybe it's here to clear the path for something better. Maybe that's why you're still here, still holding on. If this story touched something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us why we keep going, why we keep loving, why we keep believing in something greater than ourselves. Because in the end, kindness has a way of coming back. Always. And if you're looking for another story that will stay with you long after it ends, the next video on your screen is waiting. See you soon.